Welcome to the Biochar Show, where innovation meets sustainability. I'm your host, John Webster from Go Biochar, and today we're joined by a guest at the forefront of municipal biochar. Jim Doten is a seasoned environmental professional and longtime advocate for biochar. Jim currently serves as the Carbon Sequestration Program Manager for the City of Minneapolis, where he's leading efforts to advance durable carbon storage strategies, including the use of biochar in urban and natural systems. He brings 40 years of environmental experience as a professional geologist and previously held the role of Supervisor of Environmental Services for the city. Jim is also the founder of the Minnesota Biochar Initiative and serves on the board of the U.S. Biochar Initiative, which is helping to shape the national dialogue on carbon removal and ecosystem resilience. A military veteran and former U.S. Army hydrogeologist, Jim holds a master's in environmental policy and management from the American Military University, along with an MBA. His background bridges science, policy, and public service, making him a powerful voice in the growing movement to turn waste biomass into climate solutions. All right, Jim, did I cover all the important details?
Oh, yeah, you did wonderful. And I just want to say thank you very much, John, for allowing me to talk to you today. I appreciate the invitation and any chance to talk about biochar and how we can use it to advance the cause and make the world better.
Well, I guarantee you the pleasure's all mine, Jim. Let's start out, Jim, with your extensive background as a professional geologist and your time in the military and the environmental services. What first drew you to biochar?
Well, it's interesting. I was working on an agribusiness development team in southern Afghanistan, trying to improve the economic security of the area to provide stability. And when I went out, I noticed that the crops were extremely poor. And I was working on water, providing water to the villages, etc. But all the water in the world wasn't going to change the situation because we had depleted soils that have been overworked and not allowing the soil to function and grow plants, leading to food insecurity and instability. So researched biochar and came up with it, taking a look at Terra Preta in Brazil and some of the subsequent work. And this is back in 2012, so much earlier in the biochar world, and came across it as a way to help rebuild a functioning soil and using the Afghans' agricultural waste, which in this case was cuttings from grapevines and almond waste and almond tree waste. So to try to slowly restore the functioning soil and improve their security.
So how were you making the biochar?
Looked at Africa for some of the examples of how they're making village level kilns. The method I was looking at was finding used barrels and heating them externally. I've learned a lot since then on better ways to do it. But I was in the process of training the Afghan government to train the villagers on how to do it because we were trying to train Afghans to take care of Afghans. I left right at the end of getting that ready to go. So hopefully they're picking it up and continuing that work. But the big thing is that I came back to the city of Minneapolis, and that's where I noticed that a number of problems when I was working in environmental services and looking at a number of problems around the city and thinking, well, biochar could help there. Biochar could help there. Biochar could help there. And was able to talk them into trying a trial and doing it. And it turned out to be the start of what we believe is North America's first actual municipal biochar program. Not just one house, but an actual program. It's kind of built it up from there.
That's amazing. You know, we first met with my work through USBI. Actually, I think you and I had connected even before when I just had first started my Go Biochar business. And you were researching this, and I saw some posts, I believe, on LinkedIn. So we connected, and then we met at the 2022 North American Biochar Conference and had a good time just chatting about biochar for a few hours. Anyway, what I'm wondering about is I know that I had the tie-ins with the U.S. Biochar Initiative, and then what was your aha moment that led you to found the Minnesota Biochar Initiative?
One of the things, I was working in isolation with biochar, and there was very few voices at the time in 2013 when we were working on it in the city. And there's a few. We were very lucky to have Kurt Spokus from the USDA ARS and a few others, but there's very few voices. But there's more and more and more that started popping up on the screen. But nobody was united, and we're all working independently, and thought that we really need to get a group together to bring the voices together and start working on the mission, not just our own personal stories or our own personal missions, but to get together to promote it, because that's the only way we're going to open the market and develop the stuff safely and effectively. And so brought together the stakeholders, and everyone else felt the same way. So I went ahead and incorporated MNBI and got it going.
That's amazing. Yeah, Spocus has done some really amazing work. He shares the good and the bad, which is absolutely critical in the biochar industry. We need to make sure that we celebrate the wins and also learn from the losses. So he's been doing some groundbreaking work. I wanted to ask, what are the primary goals of MNBI? And I guess you've been going for about a year and a half now. How's the organization evolved since its founding?
Well, it's been going well, pretty successful for the short time that it's been around. Coming up on the second anniversary here in just a couple of months. But what we really did is bring together all the stakeholders in here. And one of the things we do is we've got the University of Minnesota Natural Resource Research Institute, various state agencies like Pollution Control, MnDOT, now Department of Ag, counties, cities, industry, and advocates, including Great River Greening and other nonprofits, stakeholders. And everybody has a goal to move ahead, and we're all unified in we're trying to advance, provide education and outreach on this, develop up the standards and uses and practices and document that, and really promote biochar use, and really trying to get it where this is a practice that that we do, and mainstream the practice so it isn't just a one-off boutique demonstration, but there's actually a sustainable function for biochar in the state.
Yeah, are you working with other cities than just Minneapolis then?
Yeah, we've got a number of initiatives going around Minnesota. There are a number of cities that are looking at it, and counties. So we're seeing, particularly at the county level, a lot of interest in that, because a lot of the wood waste is coming through county levels. And so we're trying to manage that waste. With the cities, one of the things that in Minneapolis, in the metropolitan area, it's the largest metropolitan area in Minnesota, of course. One of the things that was restricting my use was I couldn't get biochar locally. I had to go out of state to get good biochar and bring it out in. And found out that there's a difference between biochars,
Uh-huh.
and you need to have access to a good one. And if you have a bad experience, it'll stop the process and everyone will get a bad taste. So doing it right. And one of the things I noticed that there's a lot of interest from counties and cities, particularly in the metropolitan area, for urban applications. I couldn't get it. No one else could. So our project to build biochar, create biochar, is to provide a local source, but also act as a regional asset so that the other cities and counties and other government agencies have access to it to implement in their own infrastructure.
Well, the work you're doing at MNBI is absolutely critical. So thank you for that. Could you walk us through Char Talk
I
and how
will.
Char Talk came to be?
Work back up one on that is that with the other cities, where I'm getting a lot of interest since we started here from other cities around the United States. And we're working now with a number, particularly on the East Coast, a number of major cities that are looking at biochar projects and looking to what we're doing here as an example. And we're seeing that develop all around. And not only that, but now internationally as well. So we're getting a lot of attention from all over the U.S., or all over the world, except for Antarctica. And they
Yeah.
just don't have trees.
Yeah, nice. Well, they do have other forms of waste, but
Yeah.
I do want to come back to the Char Talk topic. I know you have this monthly webinar. What type of topics and guests do you feature, and what's the feedback you're getting from the community?
Char Talk has been amazing, and that was one of the early initiatives we had in looking at it. We're originally Char Talk was a means to promote our own endeavors in a smaller group, so we can highlight what we're doing in Minnesota at the university, NRI, Minneapolis, industry, nonprofits, etc. But it really grew rapidly from there, realizing that we have a great potential to bring in various experts from around the North America and from around the world to talk about topics that we just don't have access to. If we just stay in our own little market, we're not going to learn more about carbon credits, different technologies, applications, finances, etc., and the things that we really need to do to develop it up. And there's been a great impact that we've had. We've seen the one thing that really surprised me is the international attention that Char Talk has been getting. And I've had people all the way from Iran, Brazil, Morocco, Egypt, India routinely coming on to the show to learn this and getting a lot of feedback and participation. We've had now a number of people have heard about it, so we're getting people to volunteer for Char Talk to whether it be promote electrification with biochar projects, talk about the credit market, large scale demonstrations, university research. And so we're getting a lot of attention. We've had a number of them from Europe, etc. So it's really turned into a way within North America to present out even the World Regional Association, but trying to get this out to the broader market and get the concept of regional markets or regional associations also out to the various areas and hopefully start to coalesce a network across the United States or North America to work in conjunction with USBI.
You know what? I
That's
know
right.
that USBI does a great job in promoting your events, and so
Yeah.
that's been fantastic to see. I know I push them out. I see a bunch of other user groups that are pushing them out, and of course, you do a fantastic job. What have been some of either your biggest wins or challenges in getting the local or state level support? Has there been any pushback for that? Because I know that's a civic group and separate of your city activities.
Yeah, and it's been one of the things the city's been very good about helping me or supporting me in MNBI because I realize that this is a new market and a new endeavor for everybody. And I have to create the market and not only create the plane of the biochar manufacturing and use, but get the markets developed and get those standards developed and such. And MNBI really supports that. And also, if we can get more carbon sequestered across the state, it's going to help all of us in our mission. So been very supportive on that. One of the early things is that the ones that the stakeholders that helped me build MNBI include the University of Minnesota, include some of the state agencies and such, because we had these particularly in the academia, because they're doing the research, but they're not necessarily great at doing the outreach and the networking. And that's where they asked me if I would help on that part of it. The state agencies, we've had hit or miss at first, but now biochar is becoming out. They're hearing about MNBI, the support from the other academia and government agencies. And so we've really seen a change, particularly Minnesota Department of Transportation has really been a key player in getting the biochar standardization, testing, et cetera, done to get this into government applications, but also the Pollution Control Agency in looking at it in not only in just the remediation within waste wood, dealing with the wood waste problems that we have, but also in stormwater. They've been a great advocate for stormwater and meeting our requirements. We have what's called an MS4 permit, which comes from the Environmental Protection Agency down here to help us manage our stormwater, how clean it has to be, how it goes, and what we're trying to do to protect the Mississippi in this case. And what they've really pushed on is what we call TMDLs, total maximum daily loads of a particular contaminant. And now it turns out that biochar in the stormwater systems can help reduce those loads and help us meet our goals under our MS4 permit. And under that, that's been driving a lot of activity in the stormwater field from both Pollution Control Agency and at the watersheds and public works. So that's been a really interesting phenomenon. But that wouldn't have come about without MNBI and bring it together, all the stakeholders together to talk about these things and work together collaboratively with government, academia, research, and industry, other stakeholders.
Yeah, that's really fantastic. I think I personally am very grateful to MNBI, and I'd have to say my favorite episode of your Char Talk was the one where we were able to introduce the biochar-on-site.org program, which was formerly the USBI Biochar in the Woods program. So you gave us a platform. It was a fantastic launch for our rebrand and the update. We were able to announce the new flame cap kiln fact sheet. I know I've enjoyed a lot of the other webinars as well, but that was my favorite episode.
I could
So
see
thank you,
why.
Jim. Yeah, thank you.
And you bring up a point on that one is that this is not meant to just industrial scale biochar. This is all biochar in all forms, whether it be biochar on site where we're working in flame cap kilns or other smaller methods, small to medium, and also the industrial size, like what we're doing with Minneapolis and the rotary kiln that we're doing float soil pyrolysis, up to the flame curtain devices that we're seeing now. Washington County just is putting one up to deal with the wood waste issues, et cetera. So we're looking at all scales. And one of our members, Todd Rexine, Great River Greening, has been working closely with BOSS on doing these things. And he's been a great one in outreach to public, and particularly with our park boards, et cetera, in dealing with invasive species with those technologies that BOSS promotes. So it's been a great cooperation or collaboration between Boston and MNBI. I'm really excited to promote, because we're looking at getting biochar, and we're an unabashed advocate for biochar in all its forms.
Well, and I'm glad you mentioned Todd, because Great River Greening will be doing the field day on day 4 of the North American
Yes.
Biochar Conference. That's September 15th through 18th.
Yep.
If you don't have your tickets yet, I encourage you to sign up soon and join us in Minneapolis.
That will be an exciting field day. We're
Yeah.
going to be at the Shakopee, Metawakan, and Sioux. They run the largest organics recycling facility or composting facility in the area. They have a brand new facility. They just ran the grand opening a couple weeks ago. We're going to be doing demonstrations down there. Todd is, with different rings, different sizes from 1 yard to 9 yard. But we're also going to be talking about the compost, and I have somebody from Texas State University to talk about how biochar and compost work together in the soil to enhance soil health and plant production, et cetera. That's going to be an awesome field day down there.
Yeah, I've already blocked that out on my schedule. So I think what I want to do is I want to move into the discussion around municipal biochar. What you're doing is really important. It's a growing segment of the industry. You know, Jim, Minneapolis received a $400,000 grant from Bloomberg Philanthropies for the Bloomberg Cities Initiative to
Yep.
scale up your biochar production and your program. Can you tell us what this recognition and this funding meant for the city and for your team's work?
Oh, it was number one is to be recognized that biochar in municipal applications is a thing. When I started this out, it was hard, and it was kind of the lone wolf out there in talking about these applications, and they call them like Tupperware parties, doing different demonstrations of applications mainly in urban ag, but then into forestry, into site remediation and in transportation projects. So there was a slow evolution. And when Bloomberg came through the city on another issue with climate, that where we're working with them, they found out we had a biochar program, and they were surprised any city in North America had a biochar program. They had promoted the one in Sweden, in Stockholm,
Mm-hmm.
and that had done very well and is gaining a lot of attention. And they were just coming out with another initiative to expand on the Stockholm experience that they had there. And we put together our 2019. Things didn't happen because of COVID. Reopened in 2022. We got the grant, one of 7 worldwide. We're very, very happy. But what this really did is bringing this up and showing to including stakeholders in Minneapolis that yes, Bloomberg helped recognize this is a viable thing for municipalities to do, because it hadn't been done. People hadn't known about it, but they recognized it as moving forward. So now it really opened eyes a lot of people at the city, including Public Works, et cetera, that this is a really neat method that we can use to improve our operation. And so it really led to a lot of buy-in politically and through our enterprises.
Yeah, sometimes that little tip is really all you need. You know, 400,000 isn't anything to shake a stick at, as it were.
No.
And my understanding is part of your key initiative behind looking into the commercial pyrolysis systems in the city project was to deal with the impacts of the emerald ash borer crisis that you
Yeah.
have going on.
Yeah, and that was one of the key things that crisis, the wood crisis, was one of the key things that in our narrative for the work. When I first started looking at biochar and potentially daydreaming about what an operation would look like if we made it, one of the key stumbling blocks I had was access to feedstock, even within the city. That was all the wood was tied up with various sources. It was balanced in the city. Emerald ash borer came through and is devastating. Minnesota has one of the highest ash populations in the country as far as trees go. And in Minneapolis, we used to have enormous elm trees that graced our boulevards. And Dutch elm disease, a fungus came through and destroyed the elm trees, knocked them all out. And so our boulevard trees were gone. So, hey, let's replace them with ash trees. What could be wrong with that? Now we're losing 100% of our ash trees. We've taken out every public ash tree there is. 90% are on public property, but they're coming down in the next 5 to 7 years. We're in crisis mode across the state. Pollution Control Agency is looking at it. And that wall of wood or wood tsunami is what allowed us the opportunity to propose our project to responsibly address part of that waste. Otherwise, it's going to go into open burn and release that carbon dioxide back into the atmosphere. Nothing's better than a tree for collecting carbon and turn it into a durable form when wood. But then when the tree dies, unless you do something with it, it cycles back up. So what we're doing is that saying, hey, let's harvest some of that wood and turn it into a stable, durable form that can do amazing things in providing sustainable building materials, restoring soil health, sequestering carbon, and all those other things. And one of the big pushes I make on this as well is that people keep pushing the climate aspect or the environmental benefits that come with it. And you get them both. And so I say left and right Twix, they're the same. So we always talk about both together, but this allowed us to go through and show this is a problem. And just as an example, our city or the metropolitan area in Twin Cities is geared to handle 350,000 tons approximately of wood waste a year. That's how the waste system is balanced out. Right now, we're experiencing about 550,000 tons, 445 to 550,000 tons. The balance of that, we can't make enough mulch to turn all into something. But they're looking at open burn now of this wood piles. And if any component goes down for a short time, the system backs up. We're trying to show a responsible way, a carbon negative way that we can demonstrate how to do this. In Minneapolis, we're not trying to replace private industry, but we're trying to show the example that can be done and how ways to integrate it in. Most of the attention nationally has been on large scale applications, agricultural applications, et cetera, or in the forests. What we're saying is that there's a great opportunity in the urban environment for this. Actually, governments, county and city governments are a great way to implement it in our infrastructure in these manners, in addition to urban agriculture, which is everyone first thinks about.
Yeah, it's a great way to kind of scale everything horizontally. So it's really fantastic. I mean, we take your wood waste, and it's only waste until we find a use for it, right?
Well,
We
that's a good way to
convert it
put it.
into that. We convert it into that awesome, amazing product, that simple piece of carbon that's so elegant with the solutions it provides, and it's one of the things I like about the municipalities, and I live in Salt Lake and Salt Lake City, Utah, and I would love it if we had a little bit more of that biochar activity and that progressive stance on carbon capture and utilization that you and your team have. It'd be really fantastic. It's a worthwhile investment for the taxpayers, at least in my opinion.
I said one of the things that came up actually I'm in the health department, which was a very unusual place for a biochar place to grow. And it's just an anachronism, how we got inherited by the health department doing the environmental work. But that provided an entryway working with the Shakopee, Metawakan, and Sioux tribe. And their compost originally was providing biochar and compost into the communities that were experiencing health disparities and food access disparities, and working with those communities to grow food that's culturally appropriate food, restoring soil, and addressing those health disparities with biochar. And that was the end that allowed me to start working with biochar and then start working out from there into the other applications. So that's still at the core of our work is equity work with those communities across the city, but primarily in our environmental justice zones with those groups that are experiencing health disparities and access to healthy food.
Wow, that is fantastic work. Absolutely fantastic. You had mentioned Stockholm earlier. I'm assuming that you had a chance to go over there. What were some of the lessons or innovations you're drawing from that international example? And then also let's tie it back after you answer that to what's uniquely local about your approach.
Yep, no, that's a great way. Said Bloomberg happened to be out here for another reason, found out we were working on it. They were just putting together an invitation to cities across the world to visit Stockholm and see what Stockholm had done. And they have a rotary kiln that they provide local tree waste in, make biochar, and then it went in primarily into their city trees and surface water treatments, and then some for the city folks to bring out and use as well. But we were the only city in North America that received an invitation. And so it was out there. There's 14 cities that were out there, and Minneapolis is the only one from North America. I was able to bring along a council member and the head of our public works, and they've both heard me going on, waxing on about the beauty of biochar. But then they come out, and as the public works director, who was a no nonsense engineer, and she was just, geez, Jim, you were right. The stuff is amazing. So she started looking at ways. Her idea was to have this with public works politically as well. That council member then was a key advocate politically to help pave the way and get, this is a key part for us, is to get that into our comprehensive plan, because we have to have a basis to work on things to move forward. So he was the one that introduced that into the Minneapolis Comprehensive Plan as part of the metropolitan planning, in having biochar in to build climate resilient communities. And from there, that kind of, I took that to hold and was able to build on that. What they're mainly working on in there is they're very famous for their Stockholm tree method, where they have structured soils, basically rock with some compost and biochar in street trees, so rather than their tree coffins that normally are planted. And they've had great success in growing that, and also rehabbing existing trees that have been around even up to 100 years, and going through air spading and putting some treatments around the roots. And the amazing before and after pictures are just phenomenal. So we had the chance to look at those examples and also what they're doing to treat stormwater before it gets discharged into the Baltic. It was a fantastic opportunity, and Bloomberg helped support us at that time to start envisioning what it would look like if we could do our own, how would we do it, etc. And that brings into our own unique situation, rather than just cloning what Stockholm did. And there's been a lot of focus on, particularly on the structured soil and the trees and biochar. But for us, a lot of it is looking into, actually in the public works, with stormwater applications, in boulevard applications, in other or green spaces, into kind of the circular economy with our urban forests, tree plantings. Not just, we don't plant trees in the tree coffins or in those vaults, but we do a lot of it where we scoop a hole and we have bare root stock, where instead of old ball and burlap, but it's a tree that's pulled out of a gravel bed and you plant it, but amending it with biochar and compost in that backfill. And then that, in order to reduce the mortality of the trees, because we are running into drought issues, et cetera, and trying to plant trees in a boulevard is the harsh environment, and we have high mortality, to reduce that mortality. And then also, our traditional work within the green zones, the environmental justice communities, what we call our green zones, in addressing urban ag issues, sustainability, and drought resilience with those crop systems. We showed that with our changing rain patterns. August, we experienced a lot of droughts, and we see a lot of our urban food systems fail because of that, lack of water, et cetera. So we've demonstrated, particularly what's called Little Earth, which is the only Native American HUD development in North America.
Mm-hmm.
They were growing pre-European contact seedlines using traditional growing methods, etc. And we did a comparison with compost biochar, and the compost biochar showed such a difference in drought resilience that it made an amazing difference in what that meant to the community in trying to restore a native diet to address the health issues associated with Western diet. Quite incredible.
Yeah, I'm in Salt Lake City, and we have some really arid soils, and adding that biochar just helps with that water holding capacity alone really allows the plants and the biology to survive and thrive. And one of the things I wanted to ask about is you using the survival rate of the trees to justify the investment in biochar,
No,
because I mean,
that's only part of it, but what we're looking at, the investment is coming from where can we use it in our infrastructure. We've since put it into our climate action plan, what we now call our climate equity plan. and incorporating biochar into green spaces to help them thrive and develop up a good soil health. But the other part is our public works is really embracing this in stormwater applications for treating contaminants that are being through there, helping infiltrate stormwater, and the transportation redevelopment, the side roads, helping plant survival, creating pollinator corridors, natural plantings, etc., with the biochar. So that's a lot of where we're seeing the work really evolving. And one of the big aspects on this, we've been working with the Minnesota Department of Transportation, who's been a strong ally there. And they're working on a number of studies to show that biochar is safe and effective, and now developing up the standards that we need to do with the specifications so that engineers are comfortable with speccing biochar into their projects, which I see as one of the big challenges we face right now. Is engineers are by tradition very conservative, and they want to know how to do this. And so
Yeah.
that's one of our big things right now through MNBI and supporting MnDOT is to develop those specifications for engineers to feel comfortable to get it into contracts. And I see that being the biggest opener for biochar in urban applications is that aspect of it, and the rest of it will flow from there. That will build up the financial viability of it. Not only we're looking at selling biochar itself within government agencies, whether it be the city, county, other cities, other counties, etc. We see a lot of interest in that. And from there, in additionality, is also to develop up the carbon credit market. But that's in order to make this into where our goal is to achieve carbon neutrality, or not carbon neutrality, of course, but carbon negative, but revenue neutrality, cost recovery. And so that's one of the things is to make this an ongoing sustainable operation that doesn't need constant infusion of tax money. And we're addressing a waste issue that we have, a tremendous waste issue that we have. I have agreements in place right now with Xcel Energy for their line maintenance waste that they'll bring it to us. Hennepin County with their public tree waste. I met last week with the park board, and part of their work is under contract right now to be ground, etc. But they have additional tree waste that gets chipped that they want to bring us to us over the year. And as well, I just met with Metropolitan Transit, where the transit system who would like to bring us their tree waste, and then in return also to use that within their own projects. We're making contracts with those folks for the waste. We should think that should be adequate. But within taking a public waste, turn it into a public asset, we turn it into the public infrastructure. And we're also supporting the community groups, etc. But one thing we're not trying to do is replace the opportunity for the private investment to come in and do it. But we want to demonstrate there is a market. And if we can get it to the point where a private enterprise can come in and start supplying that and do it successfully, that's our goal, is to get this in and get a thriving biochar industry. But right now, I can't get it.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's holding our project back.
Yeah, I guess, and I think that was going to be one of my questions was, I mean, you had the funding, it tipped off the campaign, tipped off the process, you're in construction with your pyrolyzer. Assuming you have the success that everybody anticipates that you will with the cost savings and the value to the taxpayers, would you see the city investing in additional pyrolysis systems?
Well, in this one here, like I said, I've been asked about that, and it moves forward. It's easy to talk us cheap now until things come out. But what I'm really trying to do is to develop up this demand. And I've already talked to some customers or potential customers that are looking within their operation. These are all government agencies, et cetera. It's easy for me to exchange between governments than it is. I try not to get into selling to the public, not trying to replace public, but other people will make it available for what they need. As it moves forward, I would hope that we're going to see biochar develop up as a way to help manage the excess tree waste within the private enterprise, because they will have the scale and adaptability to get at things and act in a nimble fashion. Government is a great place to demonstrate it, but we are definitely turning an aircraft carrier when you're talking about building. And to build this further out, I'd have to find a new site. We're kind of wedged into a place right now, and we're able to, when it took a lot to get it in and get it developed, et cetera, and we'd have to find a new site. And if I look at this as a regional asset, that doesn't necessarily mean an expansion would stay in Minneapolis,
Mm-hmm.
but it would stay in the area.
You know what? You brought up something that is super interesting and that I'm very curious about, and that is executing on a pyrolysis project, a biochar project can be very cumbersome, especially for the on the commercial side, right? When you've got private capital coming in and they want to do this, you have all the issues with permits, public utility integration, especially if you're going to be uh, providing power. You know, you've got local policy, you've got performance goals, the permitting, the insurance, the engineering. How did you work within that? What were your biggest challenges? We know that more municipalities are going to be following close behind you. We already see that. So I bet that's one of their top questions.
It is. And it's kind of funny. If I'd known what it would have entailed back then, I don't know if I would have moved forward. But being naive as I was, moved forward, hey, it'll be great. And kind of easing into the as the water changes, gets hotter. But that was a big challenge. And one of the big things is that in a developed area that we're facing is that there's limited space available now. And with in industrial zone, we're called I2, it's a medium industrial zoning. And we're not making any more of it. And a lot of that we're having from our legacy sites are being redeveloped into multi-use or to high density housing, et cetera, as our property changes. The site that I got happens to be a legacy site that was an old grain elevator area and actually was being held for what was called Granary Road. A road project was going through that just never penciled out, but the city had it in their inventory. And I had to work through that to get officially say this project's not happening anytime soon, in order to get access to that property. And it was kind of a unicorn thing. We're right next to the university, but then tucked against railroad tracks in an old historic industrial area. So yeah, we're very fortunate to get in there. But the engineering, et cetera, one of the things that we have is that all our processes have to be done indoors. So I've got to do a secondary grind, drying, and then pyrolyzing. It all has to be in a structure, a commercial structure. So the expenses with doing it in a city environment go up. And we have to abide by all the zoning, all the permitting, all the inspections, everything else. And it makes it more difficult in a set urban environment than if I went in the out country. And one of the big things was community engagement, dealing with the neighborhood associations, et cetera, in the siting to let them know what's going up, and getting their approval was a huge part of the project. And that helped out on the political side with council, et cetera, because they don't want something in that their neighbors or their constituents are going to be upset about. So they spent a lot of late nights with a lot of community groups doing presentations, et cetera, and went from getting some resistance, being that it's the unknown, to acceptance and even endorsement of our project once they found the goals. And it comes down to the biggest things in an urban environment is the same thing in any other project. What they're worried about are truck traffic, noise, odors, and then air pollution. And once you address all those issues and show that you're listening to them and that you prove that you're not going to have the impact that they fear, then once you start talking about the dealing with the waste and the climate benefits and what's going to meet, well, then the neighborhood associations, or the neighborhood groups we had seen is like, oh, this is great news. So they're going out and advocating to their folks. And so that was a key part of getting acceptance and being able to get this through city council, et cetera, was getting that buy-in from the residents. And
Yeah.
that was a key part of that engagement.
Yeah, I think that's fantastic insight. A quick question. Are you going to be getting carbon credits with this project?
That's our plan. Oh, yes, we will be. And one of the key challenges is, with that, uh, it's expensive up front to get in, et cetera. But one of the other things that I've really been working on is paying attention to the front end of the process to make sure that we have a quality chart that meets the requirements. We're looking at the stability, making sure the product is clean, works well, et cetera, and the uniformity. And that's one of the things we're looking at with our process is a lot of what we're doing on the front end is dealing with the feedstock. So we're bringing it down to a particular particle size, moisture content, and then going through a rotary kiln at a set temperature, and then doing verification testing to make sure that we have a stable product that works, hits that sweet spot for carbon sequestration and soil health to move forward. And we're right now working with a number of folks to look at what platform would be the best one. and really learning there's a difference between which platform or registry you go through to develop those credits. And so that's where a lot of the folks that we've had on Char Talk lately have been talking about the carbon markets and carbon credits, how to develop up what makes sense for your project. We're small compared to a lot of other folks. And so that fits in a lot. Some of that comes into our narrative being a city enterprise. So if you get that kind of Goldilocks happiness story going on there. But we are looking at doing this. And one of the things we're looking at right now is the big question with the carbon credits. Do we sell those to finance the operation? But one of the narratives we have as well, this is the only carbon negative program we have within the city. We have a goal to achieve carbon neutrality. You cannot achieve carbon neutrality without a component of carbon negative because you can't cut your way to zero. There's just some things you can't cut. And so this is the only method we have. So at some point, we look at retiring those credits against our own carbon budget in order to meet our own carbon neutrality goals. And that's a policy decision to be made at higher levels. So we'll see how that ends up. But either way, we have to go through and verify what we have. So that's an independent third party. Transparency is a huge part from our air permits, et cetera, to show that we're doing everything is above board and there's no funny accounting on this thing.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think in setting exactly for those carbon neutral, carbon negative objectives, in setting at the municipal level makes just tremendous sense. In that regard, a question I have is that with the strict LCA that's required, the life cycle analysis that's required in order to get your carbon credits, did you leverage that information with the public and with city managers in order to get approval on the project?
Yes, that was a big part of it. We did do a preliminary LCA that showed us where the factor is going to be that we are carbon negative in accounting for including the agreements that we had, the technology, all the components going into LCA. And that did help out in proving that, yes, this is a carbon negative technology. And this falls under our mayor's climate legacy initiative. And so it's a part of the city goal or tactics to do it, and it's unusual. But we have what's called the Clean Energy Partnership with XL Energy and Centerpoint for natural or electricity and natural gas, respectively. In order to be the sole provider or hold the franchise, they pay a franchise fee to the city, and that is to be used for carbon reduction projects or climate related projects. And part of that money is what's being used to help fund the original investment in this is those climate legacy initiatives in order to match the Bloomberg money. And so, as our mayor has stated in his stump speeches regarding this project, is that this is the only one carbon negative component that we have. It's the only way the city can go on the offense against climate change. So you can't cut your way to zero, but this is us going on the offensive to get in there to address those hard to abate emissions and help us achieve our carbon neutrality goals. In order to match up to that, we still have to verify the credits, but eventually I do see these being retired against our climate action goals.
Yeah, thank you for that answer. One last thing on the municipal biochar question is that we have a sense of community with groups like MNBI, USBI, the International Biochar Initiative, and then other regional domestic initiatives, and as well as the global. With the growing sector of municipal biochar, is there anything going on to join up with other cities, other municipalities in order to build somewhat of a template so that way we can
Yeah.
see increased adoption? Who are you working with? What's the exciting bit in there?
Well, I've thought about that. We do have a city biochar, municipal biochar initiative at USBI, but it's not been active. So I'm looking at, but I'm, for whatever reason, while we're here, being a locus here for a lot of attention in those initiatives. And I'd like to get those people together to start talking together as a group. But one of the other things we are looking at is currently in discussion with the city CDR initiative. And that's it's an international group looking at municipal actions, including biochar in the CDR realm. And they are we'd be working with them on a template that would be an international template. So that is continuing on right now, but internally, I'm really looking to get those folks together. There's been a strong interest across the country from a number of cities and just getting us all together in one spot. to start working together on that one collaboratively, just like we're doing at MNBI. I do see that. I just haven't had the energy to follow through on that yet. But
So many
once the
things to
conference
do.
is done, hopefully I can re-engage. Or that's one of the things we're talking about at the conference is regional associations, municipal biochar, et cetera. And there, if you come in on the first day, on Monday, that's one of the discussions we'll be having.
Fantastic. That's great news. I think with that touch point, I want to say congratulations to your hometown for being the host of the 2025 U.S. Biochar, uh, North American Biochar Conference. I think it's fantastic. I'm guessing that the whole move for municipal biochar also helped with kind of the nudge to attract USBI and the 1 to 2,000 people that are going to attend the conference this year. Tell us more about that.
No, that's the what we're doing in Minneapolis and MNBI was a big driver because Minnesota right now has been showing up as a hot spot on the biochar activity map of the United States or North America. And there's been a lot of news and attention in here and what we're trying to do. And we're trying to capitalize that. We put a proposal together to USBI in order to highlight the work that we're doing here in Minneapolis. USBI liked the proposal and chose Minneapolis for a lot of those reasons. And I'm very fortunate because I kind of got the trifecta going on is that we've got the Carbon Sequestration Program, as it's called. So I work for the host the city. We are the official host city. Well, the mayor will be out there, et cetera. And the Minneapolis Convention Center. So we're very proud of that as a city to host this. Also, MNBI, working with MNBI and Minnesota Biochar Initiative. We are the community partner associated with the USBI conference. And so I'll be up on the stage with Miles there at the kickoff, talking about both Minneapolis and MNBI. And also being a board member of USBI helps as well. But we're very excited to have everybody here to show off what Minnesota is doing and the leadership that we're working together, because we're trying to promote this as a state and as a region, and not just any particular initiative, but your own flavor of the day. But we're really showing that we're trying to achieve biochar success across the enterprise or across the state and helping all parties. So it's a great way to showcase that.
Yeah, I know. So I know that SBI had attended an ASLA at the American Society of Landscape Architects event that was held at the Minneapolis Convention Center. And
Yep.
then it was brought up, hey, we should really look at doing our next event there. And then reaching out to you and saying, hey, Jim, here's an RFP. Who do we talk to? So, and I also know that beyond that, that the RFP is out now for any other cities that might be interested in hosting future North American Biochar conferences. I know that USBI would love to hear from you. As well, I guess I should disclose that both Jim and I are on the Biochar conference team. So we've been working for the last several months to help put this together, develop the content. Of course, Tina Messer and Miles Gray, they deserve the bulk of the kudos for their work on that team, but it's going to be a fantastic conference. What are you planning to involve community-based organizations, the local tribes, urban forestry groups? Who do you have that's going to be there and why and how and what are we looking forward to?
Most of them are going to be there are through the umbrella of MNBI because a lot of them are partners. We're actually getting engaged more with the tribal members outside of just Shakopee, Metawakan, and Sioux, but the Native Carbon Coalition, etc. And we're hoping to see their participation at the conference. The tribe is SMSC is supporting the conference, hosting the field day, etc. We've been doing a lot of work with the biochar world there, and they're trying to meet their carbon neutrality goals and are looking at biochar as a way within the tribal communities, but also various groups such as Great River Greening, other agencies similar to that will be involved through MNBI, providing volunteers. We have a strong participation with University of Minnesota and the students, etc. Then we have various groups within Minneapolis, community groups that have expressed interest in supporting. We're trying to get those folks connected up for volunteer status, et cetera, to help support behind the scenes because Minneapolis is a progressive community and we have a lot of community groups that are looking forward to this to address primarily on the climate side, but also on the food equity and other justice issues to help provide support for MNBI as well. And that includes through the field trips, et cetera. And as a host city, we have a number of our enterprises around here that are very happy to host events, et cetera, around the area to show what Minneapolis has. It's actually quite a beautiful city, the parks, lakes, etc. And
Yeah,
so
I
we're really
understand. It's
proud to
also
show it
very
off.
walkable.
Yes.
So let's do a quick shout out for biocharconference.com. That's biocharconference.com. Every year we're going to have a conference, so count on that as a reliable resource for the dates. The agenda for the 2025 show was just published yesterday, so please go to biocharconference.com to check that out. And then also you'll want to follow USBI on outlets like LinkedIn, Twitter, X, Instagram, Facebook, etc. So at the same time, make sure you're following and MNBI and Biochar on site. So let's move on to kind of the broader vision, your own personal ambitions. I mean, you have the position, you've got that newly minted position as a board member for USBI. So, how do you see the national landscape of biochar evolving in light of the new carbon removal protocols and funding opportunities? What is it that you find exciting? What do you think is going to be the most durable? What are you pushing the hardest for?
Well, my own sphere right now is in the urban applications. When I started out in biochar, everything was focused on agriculture. And, or I should say, that was the vast majority of it, and the traditional views on soil health, et cetera. So that the urban applications, that for me personally, that's where I
Mhm.
advocate for. Still work with the larger agricultural and soil health community, but that's where my passion lies, is in the infrastructure. And one of the things I see on this was upcoming is in sustainable building materials, and particularly we're looking at it with concrete. I'll help reduce the impact of concrete, but if we're looking at a number of other issues, fortunately, we're kind of cold weather for asphalt, but there's a lot of other applications that are coming up for biochar to make this scalable. But also through MNBI and USBI, we're looking at a lot of opportunities. Now, how do we get this into the large scale agriculture? And I've been talking to a number of firms around here that are looking at this from the soil carbon aspect, and from 336 with NRCS in different states adopting 336. So how do we get that message out to these states, the state soil scientists, to get them to adopt this and start looking at projects and the funding mechanisms that can help agriculture succeed? One of the other things we're looking at, not just in for soil health, but a lot of things we're looking at in the state are dealing with farm's edge, and particularly nitrate management, filtration strips, et cetera, and dealing with runoff from agricultural fields. And we see that as a potentially successful area, another alternative area in agriculture for biochar applications. We have one of our members looking at it in bioreactors, but we're working with some of the counties around here in ag land, filter strip to deal with runoff from the fields, in addition to potentially using it in soil to address soil health issues, traditional soil health issues and planting issues. We still have a tremendous wood waste issue. The other part of it is, what do we do with the waste heat that's generated with this, be it electrical generation? In fact, I have a meeting this afternoon with XL Energy to talk about biochar as a potential replacement for natural gas for heating large buildings, on how to use those alternatives. Using full waste use of this material within our built environments is kind of where my passion lies. And I know there's a lot of other people that are working on it on this large scale agricultural side. USBI just announced their agricultural specialist hire the other day. Take a look at that one. Congratulations to Miles. So that was a hard search. And that's a big focus where we're trying to work on through USBI. But where my niche is right now is working on, I see on the urban applications, and I really want to see regional associations develop up across the country. And this is not just urban applications, but all applications. USBI is covering the high topics, and they can't drill into the details that we need at the local levels or regional levels to address your conditions, your feedstocks, your needs. And so we really need to develop up a network, regional associations, to address that, what's happening in your area, your geographic location, your latitude, climate. So that's one of the other passions I'm working on right now, is to try to help replicate regional associations suited to local conditions.
That's absolutely wonderful. Earlier, you'd mentioned, the urban infrastructure, the use of it in concrete, the cement applications, a lot of people don't realize that there's more to cement work and that flat work than building buildings. We have path and pad, driveways, all these things that are non-critical, non-weight bearing. And if you think about how many thousands of square miles of that type of cement that we have out there, that kind of flat work, that's so much biochar that could be installed
Yep.
in the urban environment.
And that's a lot of what we're working on right now. We're working with the University of Minnesota on those. And one of the big issues long term is, of course, through ASTM and other American Standard Tester methods, working on those concrete issues. You have to make sure it's verified for those structures, weight bearing structures, to make sure it meets code. But you just hit on a lot of what we're working on: the curb and gutter, the driveways, all those others that are not critical. Building is not going to fall down with the curb and gutter. But that's a great
Yeah,
way
yeah.
to get out materials out there. And we're working with various agencies on those ones. And the other one I'm really excited about are the long linear targets, and particularly the roadway developments. We're looking at it for first flush applications. So as the roadway gets the rainwater comes off, we're looking at the first flush and how do we address the contaminants coming off of that? And biochar addresses a lot of those issues. And so we see that large scale applications with our transportation projects and also within our stormwater to, again, with the first flush, that's what's bringing the contaminants into our waterways, shutting down our beaches. So we're looking at a lot of our applications right now are dealing with those issues of those mass contaminant flushes that are coming out and how biochar can help address those and make our world safer and protect our waterways.
With that first flush in the roadways, do you think your city or your state will be the first ones to rename the Department of Transportation to the Department of Transportation and Infiltration?
Yeah, that was a good point. Yeah, thanks for that segue on that one. But yeah, no, we were just talking about this the other day with John and I, and that was a great. I don't know who to give credit for that one, but it's a great thing. But that's exactly what with Minnesota Department of Transportation. I'm looking at it. That's exactly what the main area we're working on with biochar is the Department of Transportation and infiltration on the road shoulders, the slopes, and get into infiltrate and remove those contaminants to protect it. And that's the place to do it, not a set device right before it dumps into the creek, but along those roadsides to infiltrate and treat those the water. That's right. Department of Transportation, infiltration, whoever that is, I'm going to harvest that and reuse it myself.
Yeah, yeah, I heard that on Alpha Lowe's water podcast. So I thought it was fantastic, and it stuck. And I'll make sure to give due credit where it's owed.
Yep.
So I guess as we move toward the end of this, what's your message to young professionals, land stewards, or policymakers who are just now learning about biochar?
Looking at this is not a one off or one aspect. So the big thing we hear about is either focusing on, as I said before, focusing on climate or focusing on environmental benefits. They're both. And the other one I'm really beginning to realize in soil health is looking at this is don't look at it necessarily as a material, but as part of a system and how it works. And one of the biggest things I'm really having an eye-opening experience right now is how biochar operates in the soil, particularly with the soil microbial systems and what it means around there, how it enhances creating a functional soil and plant growth is how it interacts. It's part of the answer, but how it's a missing cog in that piece of that system. We've long ignored the inert carbon component, but what it does is greatly influence that area and start looking at that instead of just focusing on just biochar, but biochar is a key component of a system.
Absolutely, that's well said. Personally, one of the things that I like to do when I see somebody new coming in, I welcome them to the rabbit hole. I point them to
Yep.
places like Google Scholar. I point them to the Biochar Research Glossary, and then also to the USBI website. It's like find the curated resources, find content you can trust, and work from there. But yeah, with all the studies that have been done, it's proving to be rock solid with all the carbon credits that are issued on biochar. People begin to realize that this is a workhorse of agriculture. It's a workhorse of urban infrastructure, municipal works, water filtration. It can do quite a number of things. It's a wonderful baseline to support the human industry.
One word of encouragement that I see here, and John, you've been in this quite a while as well, is that when we're first in here and you talk to folks and it's an education piece every time. Nobody ever heard about it. And it's like, oh, that's interesting, and start getting that out. Now you go in a room and it's hard not to find somebody who's not heard of it. There's somebody
Yeah.
out there. And so the interest is growing, and I see a passion when I bring it up to our new hires within the city or the seasonal technicians, et cetera, and bring that up. They're excited. They want to volunteer to help out. So I see a lot of enthusiasm in the younger generation, and now they're teaching it in schools, et cetera. And just like you said on the studies, now when we were in it, we're looking at the individual studies, and now there's enough where we're looking at the meta studies, and the meta studies are showing that it works. And that makes the argument a lot easier.
And the good news is that we also learn from the failures, right? We take the good, we take the bad, and we put it all together and build upon it. So, all right, well, Jim, I want to thank you so much for joining the Biochar Show today from Minneapolis, which again is home to the 2025 North American Biochar Conference. This conversation has been wonderful, insightful, inspiring. I know our viewers and listeners are going to be walking away with a lot to think about. And Jim, for anybody that wants to connect with your work or follow along with what you're doing, where's the best place for them to find you?
The best place to find me is on LinkedIn, and I believe it's under Jim Doten. It might be James Doten, but Doten. You look up Doten in Minneapolis or Minnesota, you'll find me. And there's not a lot of us. And please, that's the best place to get a hold of me is on LinkedIn. Otherwise, you can email me at my work. It's jim.doten@minneapolismn, one word, .gov. And be glad to respond to you and help you out in any way. We only get better by building our collaborative that much bigger.
Yeah, and then I want to point out that you can find news as well on the Minnesota Biochar Initiative page on LinkedIn. So if you look up Minnesota Biochar Initiative, it'll come up for you. They announce the monthly char talks, so make sure you sign up for that. And then while you're there, go ahead and look up the U.S. Biochar Initiative, follow them, and then also look up Biochar on site and Biochar Today. So
Yep.
to our listeners, thank you for tuning in. If you enjoyed today's episode, the best way to support the Biochar Show is by subscribing on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or on YouTube. Don't forget to leave a 5-star review. It really helps others discover our show. And if someone in your life would find this episode valuable, go ahead and share it with them. And Jim, again, big thanks. It was so fun to talk to you. I know we have a lot of great conversations. I look forward to more. I look forward to meeting in person at the show, getting a tour of the host city with you. And so thank you so much. Any parting words before we say goodbye?
No, I want to thank you there, John, and the Biochar Show. It's been an honor being here. It's been a long time in the planning. I'm finally glad we were able to execute. Please connect with us and keep promoting the biochar, and let's expand the world. I hope to see you in Minneapolis in September.
All right. We all love biochar. Let's go.